Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin, collecting on reviews and general musical meanderings. One of my goals is to try to expose lesser known and maybe independent artists that I run across, especially contemporary ones. And so to that end, this week I'm taking a look at Dana Jean Phoenix's Pixeldust. Dana Jean Phoenix is a synthwave artist from Canada, and she has a pretty interesting background going into the making of this album. Pixeldust is her fourth album. It's from 2018. And previous to that, she had done quite a bit of studying in music and in performance art. She has a background in contemporary music and also studied musical theater, and also spent some time in Second City up in Canada doing improv classes. So she kind of has an idea about how to create a persona and make it convincing in a performance setting and also in a recording setting, how to put it out there and make it believable. Dana Jean Phoenix's goal is pretty explicitly nostalgic. It's her idea to sort of capture a certain type of 80s pop music in what she does. And in particular with Pixeldust, there's a very specific mission statement with the album that she explains on her website. Pixeldust was created to take you to a time before life was complicated by all the knowledge, stress, and hard-won experience that you have now. Back when possibilities seemed endless because your world was colorfully enigmatic and very few doorways were shut to you. A time when you were in love, or you were about to be. And so if the idea for Dana Jean Phoenix's creation of this album is sort of harken back to sort of this idealized youth that we've had where it seemed like that the world was all open to us. Generally speaking, she's very successful at that. And there's lots of things about Pixeldust that I find extremely interesting and very entertaining. But there's also some things in there I think they're a little bit problematic. Now, from the perspective of just sort of a synth album, if you take it as it is, just in terms of its sounds, there are some really incredible synthesizer sounds that compose this album. And again, we're talking about sounds that are emulating very specific sounds from the 80s. Kind of the 80s Motown sound, like a Thriller and that sort of thing. Also, just kind of like the mall tour circuit, with like Debbie Gibson and Tiffany and that sort of groups. Very specific style of pop music. But except in the way that Dana Jean Phoenix is doing it, she's got everything kind of turned up to 11. And the synthesizers are a lot more fat and a lot more beefy than they would have been probably if you side by side them with an actual 80s recording. And great drum sounds, really good programming. So there's a lot of places in here where she kind of flexes her musical training, her musical background. Plus, she plays a guitar, and so you can't get much better than that. It's kind of part of her whole persona. She's looking to capture something very specific about that time frame and then, bring it to the more contemporary times. And this extends beyond just her performance practices. If you listen to what she's doing in the music, especially lyrically, she's juxtaposing 80s music with very contemporary ideas. The lead track on the album is this song called Losing the Connection. And the whole song is all about living in this sort of virtual world and how, it feels like it brings people closer, but actually it brings people further apart at the same time. So there's lots of talk about email and having its online presence, but in the context of an 80s song. So it's that, of course, in the 80s, those things were not even close to a reality. We could see them on the horizon, but it wasn't the way that we lived back then. So it's interesting to see her play out these contemporary concerns in the settings of 80s music.
Your virtual realities become your life. You've lost your sight and thoughts to your computer's life. Wrapped up in space, now you've forgotten who you are. Dangerously replacing yourself with your avatar. We're losing the connection. Why won't you come back to me? We're losing our connection. Did you forget how to feel?
Although there's an interesting juxtaposition between contemporary concerns and 80s musical tropes arises, A lot of the lyrics, especially in the choruses, kind of come off as kind of corny and obvious. But let's take this one step further, because even though this is kind of objectively an issue that I have with the album, if I look a little bit deeper into it, you also have to think about what her source material is. Her adoption of that kind of superficial lyric approach might actually be intentional. And if it is intentional, that's actually lends one more layer of brilliance to what she's doing. It's her goal to keep the album kind of light. Even though she's talking about kind of issues that are relevant for a lot of people, she doesn't want to make it seem like it's too heavy or too deep. So it's very possible, in her desire to keep in alignment with her own mission statement for the album, that she kept the lyrics intentionally light and intentionally maybe kind of superficial in some ways. And if that's the case, then maybe the album is actually more brilliant than even it might seem, because she's taking that concept, her mission statement, one step further into even making the lyrics line up with sort of the ethos of 80s lyric styles associated with what the pop style that she's playing with.
I know I told you that it would be cool to go. You asked if I was shy, and I pushed you through the door. I thought, what the hell? We just email every day. I never knew how much I'd miss you till you were far away.
And this sort of light, superficial pop style is a reflection of what was going on and during that time. You know, I had a previous post earlier this year where I covered FM84's Atlas album. And I talked a little bit about nostalgia in the 80s and about how there's sort of this perception that when you look back on the music superficially from back then, that the 80s was a more innocent time. But if you remember and you lived through it, that was not the case at all. You know, the 80s had this sort of apocalyptic angst going on with it that was related to the Cold War. And, you know, we all felt like there was a possibility that the bombs could fall out of the sky at any moment. It wouldn't have surprised really any of us at that time if that had happened. So a lot of the music would delve deeper into those concepts and kind of take a close look at the social ramifications of that. Or the pop side, they would keep like almost escapism in their lightness. The music was almost escapist in its lightness. And Dana Jean Phoenix was just born in 1987. And so just a couple of years after she was born was when the Berlin Wall fell. So she didn't really feel that sort of fear and dread that hung over the 80s in the same way. And her reverence for this kind of more innocent time is definitely studied. But, and that may be some of the reasons why the lyrics don't quite sell as well as they could, due to their sort of light nature. But in the end, the end musical result is that the album can be at times really thrilling and really exciting due to the strength of the musical side of what she's doing. And I really, on the musical side, really love a lot of what she's doing as far as how she's constructing her sounds and how she's programming her music. Just there's a little bit of problems that I have with the lyrics, but if I think about it really closely and think about it maybe in terms of her just trying to reflect what was happening in the 80s as an outsider looking in, then it's actually a pretty brilliant idea. I do appreciate her desire to capture that zeitgeist at the time. So if you're a big fan of 80s music and you kind of wish you had more music that was like that, the things that are problematic with Pixeldust probably won't bother you too much. And you'll probably get to enjoy it for what it is, which is just meant to be a fun tribute to a past that maybe in some ways is idealized, but is still rendered in a way that's believable and fun to listen to ultimately. So that's Dana Jean Phoenix's Pixeldust. So check it out. Go over to her Bandcamp page and check it out. She has a lot of several other albums, and I think they're all pretty much along the same lines. So support her as an artist too, because this is the time when you really need to try to buy and purchase things from independent artists to help support them through this sort of difficult time for artists. And that's all I got for this one. So please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Share this video out with your friends. Also go over to my Spotify account. I've got a 2020 playlist going on. I'll put a couple of Dana Jean Phoenix songs up there. And I'll see you guys next week. And until then, I'll catch you on the flip side.